Showdown is a PvPvE shooter from Crytek featuring gorgeous visuals, engaging gameplay, and it's a non-toxic swamps of Louisiana. What really sets this game apart, it is a meticulously crafted sound system, which literally allows you to hear an approachable enemy taking a aim at your back. Thanks to this immersion, if you don't have a steady nerves, it can be gently stressful horror experience. You can play Hunt not only solo but also in groups up to 3 people. In the company of friends, naturally the fear factor quickly diminishes. However, sound crucial role is the game never fade to the background. No matter how hard Crytek tries, this shooter will always have a high entry barrier. How has the project transformed over the 6 years since its early access release, and why should you play the updated Hunt Showdown? Let's find out. Why can't we unconditionally recommend Hunt? As is typically the case, below session-based games provoke both joy and anger in equal measure. Engaging design, well-crafted maps, memorable sounds, satisfying gameplay, and numerous non-obvious but interesting mechanics. All of this naturally comes seasoned with age-old bugs, a stifling rank system, a repetitive meta, and those infamous minigames of wait until X happens. You have to wait frequently in Hunt Showdown, sometimes too frequently. The match essentially revolves around hunting 1 or 2 bosses. If someone beats you to do it, you are now hunting them instead. The conditional winner is whatever leaves the map with the trophy. Sounds straightforward, but as always the devil is in the details. For impatient people, Crytek even created a 1-2v game mode without PvE. However, as you might guess, you can spend time with friends in it. There is, however, another alternative to the standard mode, shooting range. This is also a deathmatch, but you can play it with 3 people, competing only against each other. Why such a strange limitation? Because this mode is designed to test game mechanics and weapons. In the shooting range, you can see damage to different body parts, understand how penetration works, calculate bullet travel time, and how long enemy mixtures burn, as well as how long a dummy bleeds out. This highly demanded mode, by the way, was only added several years after the game's existence. In the past, enthusiasts had to be intuitive and slightly abuse the matchmaking system to ultimately provide the community with detailed tables showing weapon damage in various situations. But better late than never. In something like Path of Exile, for example, players have been given a direct right to know what killed them for 11 years. Hunt Showdown doesn't offer deep weapon customization. It's limited to several variation and ammunition types. However, the firearms and melee weapons themselves are unique enough to be distinguished both by sound and visually. There's no modern weaponry in Hunt, was available and held together by promises and players. The promise, however, is very reliable. Your arsenal cannot fall into despair, but you can lose it along with your hunter. Even this loss isn't severe. Once you get used to the game, it's very difficult to go negative in terms in-game currency. The action balance allows you to easily maintain a 5-digit sum of money. Plus, Hunt Showdown held broke gamers with free hunters with equipment. In the worst case, a player can always take a prestige to restart their progression almost from scratch. However, if you are still not well oriented in the game, I don't recommend doing this. Taking prestige simply gives you a higher rank badge and skin while taking away your Huntley's coverage reaches. Crytek largely relies on weapon pricing to balance its power. However, even the cheapest pistol or knife can kill with a single shot or strike through the head. As a rule, no magic can save you from a solid hit to the skull in his shooter. Speaking of magic, it doesn't exist in Hunt. What plays more a cosmetic role. It barely participates in the gameplay. The most notable gameplay elements that could be attributed to its ability resurrect at ally from a distance with a Necromancer trait and remotely steals the boss reward with a Serpent. For solo players these perks differ. Necromancer allows you to recruit yourself while Serpent works from farther away. At some point Crytek even decided to add a difficult to obtain teleportation skill to the creation, but perhaps the studio simply confused which game they were making. There are also skins for equipment, but they only change appearance and often don't affect the model itself. A notable exception here is Hunter. A Hunter is essentially a blank stale. Their skills don't improve through action, but are acquired either through special trophies or with points earned to the end of the match. Characters' perks can be open up possibilities for unusual builds, but generally you can manage without them. Legendary Hunter are special skins, essentially characters with their own lore, who come with a 3 random skills right away. You can hire them as many times as you want, but for free $200 game each. However, you won't be able to assemble an entire refuge of diverse mercenaries, as they limited an overall cap. The skins themselves are purchased with a special type of currency, blood bonds. This can be obtained both through real money purchase and by completing in-game activities. Some cosmetics are tied exclusively to DLC purchases, and there's quite a few of these in Showdown. Over time, Crytek has managed to release over 15 add-ons in total. They cost around $150, which is approximately equivalent to 15 copies of the original game. Certain recent games heavily rely on replayability, and Hunt and Showdown excels at this. The shooter has a diverse arsenal that's simply enjoyable to use. In the game in particular, every equipment element is useful and can be used in combination with numerous skills and other items, as well as with your team. There is no perfect solution for all situations. For each map, the session map, where the condition and bosses are randomly selected. All players spawn at the edges of the map and usually collect clues about the boss location at various sites. These clues narrow down the search area, and they do so equally for everyone, so you can predict other hunters' movements and catch them. On paper it sounds smooth, but in practice things can unfold in the least predictable way. This multitude of nuances in planning and execution contributes to high replayability. And if you think don't go as you like, that's not necessarily bad. For example, one of the night maps, my teams and I were unlucky enough to spawn on the opposite side from the only boss. It was killed quite early, and to top it all off, an evacuation point was nearby. But since this was the only point of the interest of the entire map, we decided to try to join two general festivals. It was honestly bored just walking, so along the way I set trip mines near red barrels. At some point we finally arrived at the ending night party. Several hunters outside were easy to catch off guard, so only the ground with the boss trophy remained. How many people were in his team and how many resources had lost was unclear at this moment, but we had heard shotgun shots before, so we decided to play it safer. I had an explosive crossbow, so all the shooters and doors in the buildings were quickly broken, and then there's nothing left to blow up, and I didn't want to waste my last bullets. My second weapon was a Caldwell conversion, with ammo belt and armor-piercing rounds, but I couldn't shoot through the wooden walls. An ally soon scowled about, grabbing it with its in mid-air. In the process, I turned out that one of the hunters with a warded head also died on the arrow, but before our arrival. As it turns out to the end, we were afraid of the solo player. He was also afraid of us, so he ran to the farthest evacuation point. He ran for a long time, but not very successfully, because he soon stepped upon a trip mine I had placed. The necromancer skill helped him come back to life, but his lack of basic attentiveness led him to grave again. As soon as he were resurrected, he soon ran into traps again and was permanently laid to rest. In a 1500 house, there aren't as many amusing situations as one would like, Moreover, the closer you are to the 6 stars, its maximum rating, the more negatively it affects the fun of the matches. And unfortunately, you can avoid playing for rating in Hunt. In addition to this, very often the gameplay reduced to either active walking or active not walking, standing, sitting in place. The game also has plenty of simple questionable game design decisions that ruin the dynamics. You shoot a hunter from a group, but his friend doesn't want to show himself. Set the corpse on fire and wait a couple of minutes. Are you sure it's solo player? Well, he can resurrect himself. The procedure is exactly the same, it's the only boss being banished, and it's on the opposite side of the map. A few more minutes of the inaction added to the port made it to the boss layer, but all enemies with automatic shotguns remain in his house. Even if you move away from their location and leave the reward hunter alone, they will still only start doing something over several minutes. Continuing about pacing problems, stealth simultaneously suggests a both as good and bad mechanics. Perhaps, if you immensely love stealth, Showdown could become your ideal game. Unlike the departed Metal Gear Online, stealth is a vital component for every player, and unfortunately sometimes it goes extremes. Almost any action in Hunts creates noise. Therefore, if you're close to your opponent and know about each other, you freeze and wait until someone makes the first move. The game is also frustrating due to the bugs. What's annoying about them isn't so much that their interface. There are some glitches for several years. Sometimes with a tiny change, drawing a lamp will take away all your controls except walking, or blurred screen effects will freeze you. The latter is especially irritating, as though it hinders much less. The blow glitch can often occur when talking poison damage, while under the effect of the antidote, poison immunity. You can get rid of this bug by taking poison damage again or through several other methods. Crytek also often makes ambitious decisions. For instance, at some point the developers separate one weather condition from all others. This added a division for matchmaking in the main mode. I can't remember now whether it was rain or night, but either way, the event had a little demand. Many were annoyed by map modifier. How involved and unpopular this weather was, I can only guess, but as a result some players would launch search for it only to get the empty session and leave with the renewal unhindered. Crytek solved a problem in this and fixed it in an unusual way. They simply returned the map to the general search, essentially forcing player to play with it. But it turned out somewhat accurately, since exiting the game at the very beginning of the match is penalized in any way. The game events unfold somewhere around 1895, which the developers decide to additionally emphasize after a couple of years. On August 15, Crytek renames the project to Hunt Showdown 1886. The massive update not only conducted a small rebranding effects in the game directory name, but also transferred Hunt to the new engine. In addition to this, the studio made many changes to the gameplay. A new map, weapons and mini-boss appeared, as well as balance changes and the completely redesigned interface. But unfortunately, the major update brought with a number of unpleasant innovations, primarily affecting the interface. The menu design had many interiors before, but this one, I think, content the place was the most unsuccessful, at least in the context of the PC version of the shooter. Moreover, the main problem with the interface isn't much the disordering overall looks as the general lack of the thoughtfulness. The new menu design suffers from many strange little things that in some greatly slow down the performance of trivial tasks. For example, by pressing escape during a match, players will no longer see the team equipment. To view it, they will need to open an additional menu. To disconnect from a session, you now need to flip the menu to the next page to press the exit much better. Also due to the new interface, other familiar conveniences have suffered, like the ability to assign 2 buttons at once for one action. Of course, bugs have also been added among the unpleasant innovation. In a few hours, I encountered both crashes when opening the map and broken reconnecting to the game. However, some were less fortunate. Some gamers complained that they couldn't enter the action at all. Naturally, Crytek promised to fix the games as soon as possible, correct all the bad and improve all the good. The developers are working on hotfixes right now. and perhaps you'll be reading this publication when the studio has already fixed all of the key problems. However, my first impression regarding poorly gameplay change are predominantly positive. Many players were afraid of the appearance of Ballistic, but fortunately these fears weren't justified. Crytek introduced this change gently enough, so Ballistic is felt only at long distances. Essentially, the developers introduced a new balance element in place of the previous one. Previously, damage drop-off is a distance occupied by a bit of different. From a certain distance, bullets from some weapons stopped killing with headshots, which of course was used as one of the levers of pressure on the opponent. But from now, headshots maintain their lethality at any distance, and shots to the upper body now have a minimal damage. You won't be able to make a sniper shotguns thanks to this. It doesn't work for a backshot, and solid bugs have received an accuracy penalty. In addition, thanks to the patch, the burning of downed hunters have been noticeably accelerated, which solves one of the previously mentioned problems. Although it's still difficult to fully evaluate this change, it also leaves a good first impression. Also gone from the shooter in the echo of old age capable of causing a nervous tick, trios. Among them were a few successful ones, but in general I created the impression that they were made by some sadists, or more likely they were completely different at release. Updates affects the operation of these levels, so closer to the action translation to the new engine, some finally broke completely. However, until the very last day of their life, there was a label saying that the new set for the map had appeared several years ago, would be coming soon. So, to conclusion all of this, Showdown has always been far from perfect. Years of maintaining buffs speak for himself. But the developers still continue to polish their shooter and periodically send glitches to their well-deserved retirement. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes too long to wait for the cover to fix it. Even a year earlier, the shooter could incrementally discharge a single-shot weapon immediately after reloading it. This was unbearable, and this unbearability lasted unbearably long. Crytek demonstrates similar places in solving much more complex problems, be it balance or general gameplay elements. However, the Showdown developers are clearly passionate about their creation, and despite astonishing sluggishness, desire a better future for it. How successful the team will be in the desire, time will tell. So, with the next patches will be released. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe.